can't stand here. This is restricted state property. Move now.
I'm authorized to be here. I have a meeting inside.
I don't need explanations. You don't belong here.
Choose your words carefully.
You are not being detained yet, but if you keep talking, I will place you under arrest. The officer's voice cut through the morning air, sharp and loud enough for people nearby to hear. The woman standing beside the silver SUV did not raise her voice. She did not step back either. She stood still, one hand resting on the open car door, the other holding her phone loosely at her side. It was 8:42 a.m. on a clear Tuesday morning in downtown Brookhaven. The parking lot sat between City Hall and a row of coffee shops already crowded with commuters, delivery vans, and city employees rushing inside. The smell of hot asphalt mixed with fresh coffee drifting from across the street. Traffic hummed. A bus hissed as it pulled away from the curb. "I am asking you a simple question," the woman said calmly. "Can you tell me what law I am violating?" Officer Daniel Mercer shifted his weight and placed his hand near his duty belt. He was in his mid-30s patrol uniform, crisp badge polished. His body camera was on. He knew it. She knew it too. "You are parked in a restricted zone," Mercer said. "City vehicles only. You need to move now or I will take further action." The woman glanced at the sign behind her, then back at him. The sign clearly read, "Parking enforcement accepted 15 minutes." Her engine was still running. The trunk was open because she had just stepped out to grab a folder from the back seat. "I have been here less than 3 minutes," she said. "And this is not a city-only space. It is a timed enforcement zone." Mercer's jaw tightened. "Don't argue with me. I am giving you a lawful order." Around them, people began to slow down. A man in a suit pretended to check his phone while watching. A woman with a stroller stopped completely. Somewhere a phone camera was already pointed in their direction. "You are escalating this unnecessarily," the woman said. "I am asking for clarification, not refusing to comply." To Mercer, it sounded like defiance. His voice grew louder, harder. "Step away from the vehicle. Provide your identification. Now." The woman took a slow breath. She did not reach for her wallet yet. She looked him directly in the eyes. "Officer, before I do that, I want to be clear. Are you threatening to arrest me over a parking dispute?" There it was. The line had been crossed. What began as a routine enforcement interaction had turned into a public power struggle. Mercer felt eyes on him. Backing down now would look weak. He straightened his shoulders. "If you do not comply immediately, yes, you will be arrested." A murmur rippled through the small crowd. Someone whispered, "This is insane." Another voice said, "Just move the car." The woman finally shook her head, not in anger, but in disbelief. "This is exactly what is wrong," she said quietly. "You are turning a misunderstanding into a threat." Mercer reached for his radio. The tension hung heavy in the air, thick and undeniable. Neither of them moved. The parking lot seemed to hold its breath. And in that moment, Officer Daniel Mercer had no idea that the woman he was threatening to arrest was not just another resident arguing a parking sign. She was the president of the Brookhaven City Council. To understand how a parking stop turned into a public threat of arrest, you have to rewind the clock on both of them. The woman standing in that parking lot was named Evelyn Carter. She was 47 years old. Most people who passed her that morning saw a professionally dressed woman with a calm voice and firm posture. They did not see the 25 years it took for her to stand where she was standing. Evelyn Carter grew up on the south side of Brookhaven in a neighborhood most city officials only referenced during election seasons. Her mother worked double shifts as a hospital cleaner. Her father drove a city bus until his back gave out. Dinner conversations were about bills, not politics. Survival, not power. She learned early how systems worked by watching how they failed people like her family. Parking tickets they could not afford. Fines that doubled. Late fees that turned into warrants. Evelyn watched neighbors lose cars, jobs, sometimes custody of their children, not because of crimes but because of paperwork and penalties. She studied at night after work. Community college first, then a state university, then law school on scholarships and loans she would spend years paying back. She clerked during the day and waited tables at night. She slept 4 hours at a time. She did not complain. She focused. As a public interest attorney, Evelyn took cases no one else wanted. Wrongful evictions, unlawful searches, excessive force complaints that rarely went anywhere. She sat across from clients who did not trust the system and did not expect justice. She told them the truth. The law was slow, the law was imperfect. But it was still a tool. Her work earned her a reputation, calm under pressure, meticulous with details, impossible to intimidate. When she ran for city council, she did not have donors with deep pockets. She knocked on doors herself. She listened more than she spoke. She won by a narrow margin. 2 terms later, her colleagues elected her council president. Not because she was loud, but because she was prepared. She read every ordinance. She questioned every budget line. She pushed for police oversight, parking reform, and de-escalation training. Quiet changes that made powerful people uncomfortable. Officer Daniel Mercer did not know any of this. Mercer grew up 2 towns over. His father had been a corrections officer. Authority in their house was not questioned. You followed rules, or you faced consequences. That worldview stayed with him. Mercer joined the police department at 24. He was good at the technical parts of the job. Reports on time, uniform sharp, rarely late. Supervisors described him as proactive. What they also noted quietly was his tendency to escalate minor encounters. Over the years, there were complaints. A driver said Mercer was aggressive during a traffic stop. A college student claimed Mercer threatened arrest over jaywalking. Each complaint was reviewed. None were sustained. No body camera footage clearly contradicted Mercer's reports. Patterns stayed buried in paperwork. Mercer believed strongly in command presence. Control the situation early. Do not let civilians dictate the interaction. In his mind, compliance equaled respect. Questions felt like challenges. Parking enforcement details were beneath him. But that morning, staffing was thin. He was assigned to assist near City Hall. A simple task. Keep traffic moving, show visibility. When he saw Evelyn Carter step out of her vehicle, he did not see a council president. He saw a woman who did not move fast enough, who questioned instead of obeyed, who spoke like someone used to being listened to. To Mercer, that tone triggered something familiar, the feeling of being tested, watched, judged. By the time they faced each other in the parking lot, both were carrying years of experience, belief, and bias into a space that only needed patience. And neither of them knew yet how expensive that collision was about to become. The moment stretched longer than it should have. Officer Mercer stood with his radio clipped tight against his shoulder, waiting for compliance that did not come fast enough. Evelyn Carter remained beside her vehicle, posture steady, shoulders squared, eyes alert. She was not refusing. She was not fleeing. She was asking questions. And that to Mercer felt like resistance. "I am asking you one last time," Mercer said. "Step away from the vehicle and provide your identification." Evelyn finally reached into her bag, slow and deliberate. Not because she was afraid, but because she knew how quickly movement could be misinterpreted. She pulled out her wallet and held it up, not handing it over yet. "Before I do," she said, "I want to document this. Can you state your name and badge number for the record?" Mercer exhaled sharply. His patience was thinning. "Daniel Mercer, badge 417. Now give me your ID." Behind them, the crowd had grown. A city maintenance worker leaned against a truck, arms crossed. A young man had his phone held chest high, recording openly now. A woman whispered to her friend, "He's really going to arrest her over parking." Evelyn handed over her driver's license. Mercer glanced at it. Evelyn Carter. Brookhaven address. No flags. No warrants. Nothing that justified what this had become. He could have ended it there. Instead, he looked up and said, "Sit tight." "Am I being detained?" Evelyn asked. "Yes," Mercer replied without hesitation. "For what reason?" "Parking violation and failure to comply with a lawful order." "That's not accurate," Evelyn said. "And you know it." Her voice was still calm, but the air around them shifted. People were paying attention now. Phones were up. Mercer felt it. He felt his authority being weighed and measured in real time. A man from the sidewalk called out, "She gave you her ID. What else do you want?" Mercer turned his head sharply. "Sir, stay out of this." Another voice followed. "This is excessive." Mercer felt heat rise in his neck. The situation was slipping out of his control. He stepped closer to Evelyn, lowering his voice but hardening his tone. "You are making this worse for yourself." Evelyn met his stare. "No, officer, you are." She reached back into her wallet and pulled out another card. She did not announce it. She simply held it between her fingers, visible but unforced. Mercer glanced down. The seal caught the light. The words, "City of Brookhaven," were unmistakable. He frowned. "What is that?" "This," Evelyn said, "is my city identification. And you may want to call your supervisor before you go any further." The crowd leaned in collectively, sensing a turn. Someone whispered, "Oh no." Another person said, "I think she's important." Mercer felt it then. The first flicker of doubt. But doubt did not stop him. Pride pushed harder. "I don't care who you think you are," he said. "Rules apply to everyone." Evelyn nodded slowly. "That is true." Then she added, but so do consequences. Silence fell again. The cameras kept rolling. Mercer stood at a crossroads, one step away from making a mistake that could no longer be walked back. And he did not step away. Mercer's hand moved first. It was not fast. It was not dramatic. It was deliberate. His fingers wrapped around the metal cuffs at his belt, the faint click of steel echoing louder than it should have in the open air of the parking lot. "Turn around," he said. "Place your hands behind your back." For the first time, Evelyn's expression changed. Not fear, not panic. Something heavier. Disappointment. "Officer," she said, "you are about to make a serious mistake." Mercer did not respond. He stepped closer, closing the space between them. The crowd reacted immediately. Someone shouted, "Are you serious right now?" Another voice said, "This is insane." She did nothing. Evelyn did not resist. She slowly turned, every movement careful, visible. She placed her hands behind her back exactly as instructed. The camera phones caught everything. The angle of her wrists, the way her shoulders stayed squared, the way her chin stayed level. The cuffs closed with a sharp metallic snap. In that moment, time seemed to slow. The sound of traffic faded into a dull hum. The weight of the cuffs pulled her shoulders back slightly, cold steel against skin. Tight. Too tight. Evelyn inhaled slowly through her nose. She did not look at the crowd. She looked straight ahead. "You are under arrest," Mercer said, "for failure to comply with a lawful order." "On what charge specifically?" Evelyn asked. Mercer hesitated. "Obstruction." A ripple of disbelief moved through the onlookers. Someone laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was unreal. Mercer guided her toward his patrol car. His grip was firm on her arm. Not violent, but unnecessary. The cameras followed every step. A woman's voice broke through the tension. "This is abuse of power. You should be ashamed." Mercer opened the back door. The interior smelled like vinyl and disinfectant. Evelyn stepped in without being pushed. The door closed with a hollow thud that seemed to seal the moment. Inside the car, the world narrowed. The sounds outside were muffled now. Evelyn sat upright, hands cuffed behind her mind, already shifting gears. She noted the time. She noted Mercer's badge number again. She noted the witnesses, the phones, the angles. This was no longer about parking. This was evidence. Mercer stood outside the car for a moment longer than necessary. His jaw was tight, his breathing shallow. Somewhere deep inside, a warning bell rang, but he ignored it. As he pulled away from the curb, the crowd remained behind, stunned, silent, their phones still raised. Neither of them spoke during the drive. The city buildings passed by the window, familiar streets blurring together. For Mercer, the silence pressed in heavy and accusatory. For Evelyn, it was focused, strategic. She replayed the encounter frame by frame. By the time they reached the station, the damage was already done. The injustice had been recorded, witnessed, preserved, and it was about to cost far more than a citation ever could. The station lobby was quieter than the parking lot, but the tension followed them inside. Mercer guided Evelyn through the glass doors past a front desk officer who barely looked up at first. The sound of boots on tile echoed. Radios murmured in the background. A printer whirred somewhere down the hall. When the desk officer finally looked up, his eyes paused. "What do we have?" he asked. "Parking violation escalated to obstruction," Mercer said quickly. Evelyn spoke before the desk officer could respond. "I am requesting a supervisor immediately." The desk officer hesitated, then looked at Mercer. Mercer nodded once sharp. "Call it in." Evelyn was guided to a chair near the booking area. The cuffs were still on. She sat straight, composed, eyes scanning faces. Officers passed by, some curious, some indifferent. A few glanced at her longer than necessary. A sergeant appeared within minutes. Sergeant Linda Perez, 20 years on the job. She had learned to read rooms quickly. She took in the cuffs, the calm demeanor, Mercer's rigid posture. "What's going on?" Perez asked. Mercer repeated his version faster this time. Perez listened, eyes flicking briefly to Evelyn. "Ma'am," Perez said, "what's your name?" "Evelyn Carter." Perez froze for half a second. Not long, just long enough. She looked at the license on the desk, then at Mercer, then back at Evelyn. "Are you Evelyn Carter, the city council president?" Perez asked. Evelyn met her gaze. "Yes." The air shifted instantly. Perez straightened. She did not raise her voice. She did not react dramatically, but her tone changed. "Remove the cuffs." Mercer blinked. "Sergeant," she was uncooperative. "Remove the cuffs," Perez repeated. The metal clicked open. Blood rushed back into Evelyn's wrists. She flexed her fingers slowly. Perez stepped away and made a call. Quiet, urgent. Within minutes, a lieutenant arrived, then another. The room filled with rank. Lieutenant Harris addressed Evelyn directly. Ms. Carter, I apologize for this situation. We are reviewing what occurred. Evelyn nodded once. I want the body camera footage preserved. All of it. I want the names of every officer involved. And I want a written explanation for my arrest. Harris swallowed. Of course. Mercer stood off to the side now. Smaller, silent. His earlier confidence had drained away, replaced by a tight, pale expression. He avoided eye contact. Harris turned to him. Officer Mercer, did you know who she was? No, sir. Did you verify the signage or de-escalate before arrest? Mercer did not answer immediately. The pause was loud. Harris exhaled slowly. Step outside. As Mercer left the room, the weight of what he had done finally settled in. This was not a civilian without resources. This was not a quiet complaint buried in paperwork. This was public, documented, unavoidable. Evelyn was escorted to a private office. Coffee was offered. She declined. I will be filing a formal complaint and pursuing all legal remedies, she said evenly. Harris nodded, understood. Outside the station, the videos were already spreading. The parking lot footage, the cuffs, the arrest. The truth was no longer contained within those walls. It was out. And it was only the beginning. By noon, the video was everywhere. What started as a shaky clip filmed from the sidewalk had multiplied into dozens of angles. Evelyn standing by her car, Mercer raising his voice. The moment the cuffs came out, the sound of metal closing around her wrists. Each upload added fuel. Each comment sharpened the narrative. City Council President arrested over parking dispute was no longer just a headline. It was a question. How does this happen in broad daylight in front of City Hall? Evelyn did not give interviews that day. She went home, changed clothes, and sat at her kitchen table with a legal pad. She wrote names, times, badge numbers. She wrote down what was said and what was not. She had done this before for clients who did not have her platform. Now she was doing it for herself. By the next morning, her attorney filed a formal notice of claim against the city. Unlawful arrest, false imprisonment, violation of civil rights, abuse of authority. Each allegation supported by video witnesses and Mercer's own body camera footage. The city attorney's office requested an emergency meeting. Internal Affairs opened an investigation within hours. Mercer was placed on administrative leave before lunch. The public reaction was swift and unforgiving. The video crossed 1 million views by sunset. Comments flooded in. Teachers, nurses, city workers, people sharing stories of being threatened, searched, humiliated over minor infractions. Patterns emerged. Names repeated. Local news stations ran the footage on loop. Legal analysts broke down the arrest frame by frame. There was no probable cause, no lawful basis, no justification for escalation. Inside the department, the mood shifted from defensive to fearful. Mercer's personnel file was pulled. Complaints resurfaced. Minor incidents that once seemed isolated now formed a line. Internal Affairs interviews stretched for weeks. Supervisors admitted they had ignored warning signs. Training logs were examined. De-escalation modules signed off but never enforced. The findings were clear. Mercer had violated department policy, multiple times, in a public setting, against an elected official, with cameras rolling. The discipline hearing was brief. Termination for cause. No pension, no reassignment, no quiet exit. The city moved quickly after that. Settlement negotiations began before discovery even closed. The evidence was too strong, the optics too damaging. The final agreement included a financial settlement and mandatory policy reforms. Parking enforcement protocols rewritten. Supervisor oversight tightened. Body camera review expanded. De-escalation training made mandatory, not optional. Evelyn announced she would donate the settlement to a legal defense fund for residents wrongfully detained over minor offenses. The message was clear. This was not about money, it was about precedent. Mercer did not speak publicly. His name faded from the badge list. His career ended not with sirens, but with silence. Justice did not arrive loudly. It arrived on paper, in policy, in consequences. And for once, it arrived while the cameras were still rolling. What happened in that parking lot was not a misunderstanding. It was a violation. Under state law and long-established constitutional principles, a parking issue does not justify detention unless there is a clear legal basis. Asking questions is not obstruction. Remaining calm is not resistance. A lawful order must be lawful first. In this case, it was not. The arrest violated basic protections against unreasonable seizure. There was no probable cause, no imminent threat, no refusal to comply. The escalation came from authority, not behavior. That distinction matters. Incidents like this do not begin with handcuffs. They begin with assumptions. An officer sees hesitation and interprets it as defiance. A question becomes a challenge. A civilian becomes a problem to control rather than a person to serve. Psychologically, this is how power hardens. When identity becomes tied to authority, any perceived loss of control feels personal. De-escalation requires confidence, not dominance. It requires the ability to pause instead of push. For civilians, there are lessons too. Stay calm, speak clearly, ask if you are being detained, document when possible. Do not argue on the street. Preserve evidence. Seek legal counsel after. The goal is safety, first, accountability second. For officers, the lesson is simpler and harder. Authority without restraint erodes trust. Enforcement without judgment creates harm. The badge does not excuse impatience, it magnifies it. And for cities, this case shows why oversight matters, why patterns must be tracked, why minor complaints cannot be dismissed. Small abuses grow when they are ignored. This story did not end because of who Evelyn Carter was. It ended because everything was recorded, because witnesses stayed, because the system was forced to look at itself. The real question is not how this happened to a city council president. The real question is how often it happens to people without a title. What would have happened if the cameras were not there? What would have happened if no one spoke up? And what will happen next time? You decide.